Imagine a spiritual figure who is, like, so enlightened that he's considered the ultimate teacher of devotion, but also so disruptive that he gets blamed for starting cosmic wars.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild contradiction to wrap your head around.
Right. And today, we are taking a deep dive into a biography that, well, it doesn't start with a birth, and it definitely doesn't end with a death.
Which is exactly what makes it so fascinating, you know?
Yeah.
Usually when we talk about a biography, there's this comfortable expectation of a linear timeline.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like a map. You're born here on this specific date, you do these things, and eventually the map just ends.
Right. It's finite. A standard human life with a very clear beginning, middle, and end.
But then you step into the world of Hindu cosmology and ancient spiritual texts, and suddenly that linear map is just completely useless.
Completely. Because the biographical landscape we're exploring today is, well, it's mind-bending. The subject is entirely unconstrained by mortality.
Or even a single physical form, right? So today we are constructing the ultimate cosmic biography of one of the most omnipresent figures in Hindu mythology, Devarshi Narada Muni.
And to even attempt a biography of this scale, we're pulling from a massive, incredibly diverse stack of sources. I mean, it's a lot.
It really is. We've got ancient foundational texts like the Srimad Bhagavata Mahapurana and the expansive Puranic Encyclopedia.
Yeah. And we're also looking at modern spiritual commentaries, specifically the works of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada on the Narada Bhakti Sutra.
Plus some really interesting insights from J.K. Yog, Drik Panchang, Glorious Hinduism, and Zodiac. But we even have contemporary academic discourse, right?
We do. There's this fascinating paper from the International Journal for Multidisciplinary Research, the IJFMR.
And some analysis from VSK, which actually frames this ancient sage in a completely modern professional context.
Because when your subject is immortal, their biography naturally spans multiple lifetimes, divine curses, complete gender swaps, and what modern academics are calling the universe's very first instances of cosmic journalism.
Okay, so to truly understand how this figure operates across all these different dimensions, we probably need to establish what he actually is first.
Good call. So the texts categorize rishis, or sages, into different ranks.
Right, like a hierarchy.
Exactly. You have brahmarshis, who are the highest seers of the absolute truth, then maharshis, the great seers, and rajarshis, who are royal kings who attain sagehood.
And then you have devashis, which is what Narada is.
Right, a devarshi is specifically a celestial sage. Their primary function is to basically act as emissaries of the divine, spreading the wisdom of the brahmarshis across all the different realms.
And Narada is considered like the premier example of a devarshi, isn't he?
He is. But according to the Drik Panchang and the Bhagavata Purana, he's not just an elevated scholar. He's actually recognized as an avatar, a descent of Lord Vishnu himself.
Oh, wow. Okay, so he's directly connected to the divine source.
Yeah, he was specifically born to bestow the teachings of the Satvata Tantra.
Let's pause there for a second because Satvata Tantra sounds incredibly technical. What actually is that? And, like, why should you care if you're listening to this?
Well, it's also known as the Narada Pancharatra. And in this context, a tantra isn't what pop culture often misinterprets it as.
Right. It's not the westernized modern idea of it.
Not at all. A tantra is a practical manual. It's a system of worship and spiritual practice. The Satvata Tantra lays out the specific, regulated procedures for deity worship.
So it's like a guidebook for the path of devotional service?
Exactly. And Narada is basically the physical embodiment of these teachings. He's famously known as the mind-born son of Lord Brahma, the creator deity.
Manifesting right from Brahma's lap, right? Or wait, don't some texts say something different?
Yeah, some texts, like the Brahmavada Purana, say he appeared from Brahma's throat.
Which is actually super fitting for someone whose primary tool is his voice.
It really is. And his visual iconography is universally recognizable across the tradition. He's described as a fair-complexioned ascetic.
And he's always carrying those two instruments.
Yes, a veena in one hand, which is a traditional stringed instrument, and a karatala, or hand cymbals, in the other.
And he's always joyful, right? Like eternally chanting the name of the Lord, Narayana, Narayana.
Always. But to understand who Narada is, as this eternal, joyful, wandering sage, we first have to understand who he was.
Right, because this is where the prequel lifetimes come in. And honestly, looking through the sources, these past lives are bizarre, humbling, and frankly, kind of harsh.
They are. It's like watching a soul in training. The Puranas explicitly detail these previous births, And they weren't just random occurrences.
They were like cosmic cause and effect, usually driven by a curse, leading to a massive evolution in consciousness.
Precisely. Let's look at the first major past life detailed in our sources. He was born as a Gandharva named Upabarhana.
Okay, so the Gandharvas are celestial musicians. They live in the higher planetary systems, and their entire existence is basically dedicated to art, beauty, and pleasure.
Yeah, it's a very privileged existence. And Upabarhana was apparently quite the catch. He was a youth of exceptional charm and beauty.
I think the texts even compare him to Kamadeva, the god of love.
They do. And his life was a total reflection of that immense privilege. The sources note that 50 Gandharva maidens, all daughters of a Gandharva named Chitraratha, became completely enamored with him.
50? Wow.
Yeah. Chitraratha actually married all 50 of them to Upabarhana, so he lived this long life of extreme opulence and sensory pleasure.
But then comes the fall, because things are going a bit too well.
Right. So Upabarhana attends the royal court of Indra, the king of the gods, and Lord Brahma is also present. Everyone is gathered there for a sacred purpose.
To sing the glories of the divine, right? But Upabarhana gets utterly distracted.
Completely. A beautiful celestial nymph named Ramba is there, and he is so overcome with intense lust and desire that he literally cannot take his eyes off her.
And because of this, he completely fails to offer his respectful salutations to Lord Brahma.
Exactly. In a divine court, surrounded by sacred duties, he allowed his physical desires to completely override his spiritual awareness and respect.
Which does not go over well with Brahma.
Not at all. Lord Brahma is deeply affronted by this behavior. He curses him, condemning Upabarhana to lose his divine Gandharva status.
And he has to be born on Earth as a Dasiputra, right? The son of a maidservant. Wait, hold on. Brahma strips him of immortality and throws him down to Earth as a servant just because he got distracted by a beautiful nymph.
I know, it sounds intense.
That sounds like a gross overreaction. It feels like playing a video game where you've leveled up your character to this incredible celestial status, and then you make one mistake, and the game forces you to respawn all the way back at level 1.
Completely stripped of your powers. Yeah, it absolutely sounds like a disproportionate punishment if we view it through like a modern punitive lens.
But I'm guessing the texts have a different take on it.
They provide a completely different mechanical understanding of Puranic curses. In these ancient narratives, a curse from a highly elevated divine being is almost never a punishment born of petty anger.
Okay, so what is it then?
It's a cosmic course correction.
A course correction for the soul. That makes sense.
Look at Upabarhana's state of mind. He was completely consumed by opulence, by his 50 wives, by his own physical beauty, and by uncontrolled lust.
He was spiritually stagnating in his own privilege. He'd basically reached a dead end.
Exactly. Brahma's curse was the mechanism to strip away the privilege that was blinding him. It forced the soul to experience a life of humility, of lack, and of service.
It shattered the ego.
It did. And the text specifically notes a crucial detail here. Despite the curse filling his next life with intense desires, Upabarhana retained the complete memory of his past births.
Because of his underlying diversion, right? So he knew why he fell.
Yes, he actually used his yoga powers to lay down his life as the Gandharva so he could immediately undergo the karmic correction on Earth.
Wow. So he accepted the reset because on a soul level, he understood it was necessary for his evolution.
Precisely. Which brings us to his earthly births. The Puranic Encyclopedia mentions variations of his earthly incarnations.
Right, like the one as the son of an emperor named Drumala and a woman named Kalavati.
Yes. Drumala gives away all his wealth and dies in the forest, leaving Kalavati to become a slave in a Brahmin's house.
And the detail around his naming in this birth is really beautiful. He was named Narada. The text translates this as he who gives water.
Because the region was suffering from a terrible drought, and the very moment of his birth brought massive rain to the parched land.
But there's another birth mentioned in the Mahabharata sources that is just, it's astonishing. Before he was a celestial sage, before he was a Gandharva, he was apparently even born as a worm.
Oh, the worm story. It is incredibly profound.
The story goes that Narada, in the form of a tiny worm, is frantically scrambling across a dirt road, trying to avoid being crushed by the wheel of a massive approaching chariot.
Just fighting for his life.
Yeah, and the king riding in the chariot looks down and actually bursts out laughing at the sight of this tiny, insignificant worm, trying so hard to save its miserable little life.
And then the worm actually stops and speaks to the king.
He does. He says, "There is nothing to be laughed at in my action. In every birth, the body is much dear to the Atman, the soul. Just as you love your body, I also love and protect my body."
This story is such a masterclass in Vedic philosophy. It highlights the universal instinct of the soul to cling to physical existence.
Regardless of the biological form it takes. I mean, if you're listening to this right now and you suddenly swerve your car on the highway to avoid a pothole.
That visceral, adrenaline-fueled instinct to protect your physical form is the exact same instinct the worm was experiencing.
It totally breaks down the illusion of biological hierarchy. Whether you're a king in a golden chariot or a worm in the dirt, the illusion of identifying with the physical body is identical.
And the sheer terror of death is identical. The soul's journey requires it to understand the value and the intense limitations of every type of physical vehicle before it can truly transcend them.
So the king was laughing because he thought his human body was intrinsically more valuable than the worm's body.
Right? While the worm, possessing the wisdom of the Atman, understood that both bodies are just temporary vehicles.
So we have a soul that has experienced the heights of celestial indulgence, the depths of being a literal worm, and the humility of being born to a slave.
A very full resume.
Well, how does that soul actually break the cycle? How does a soul in training finally graduate? According to the Bhagavata Purana, there is one specific earthly lifetime that serves as the crucible.
This is the turning point of his entire biography. It's his life as the maidservant's son, which is later recounted by Narada himself in the texts to the sage Vyasa.
He explains that his father had passed away before his birth, and he was raised by his mother, who worked as a maidservant.
And the sources really emphasize that even as a young boy, he was quiet, humble, and deeply introspective.
The pivotal moment happens during the rainy season, a 4-month period called Chaturmas. A group of highly elevated ascetics, wandering monks, arrive in his village to stay for the season.
Now, Chaturmas is a deeply ingrained tradition. During the heavy monsoon rains, travel becomes difficult, but more importantly, the rain brings out countless insects and small life forms upon the ground.
So sages dedicated to ahimsa, nonviolence, vow to stay in one place for these 4 months to avoid accidentally stepping on these creatures.
Exactly. They dedicate this time entirely to spiritual discourse and meditation, and the young boy is given the opportunity to serve these sages.
He is incredibly diligent. He speaks little, he serves them with undivided attention, and he listens with absolute reverence whenever they recite the Bhagavata Katha, the stories of God.
But there's this one highly specific detail that the text focus on. He would wait until the ascetics finish eating, and then he would devotedly eat their leftovers. The text calls this Shita Prasadi.
Eating someone's leftovers sounds strange, perhaps even unhygienic to a modern listener.
It does. But in this spiritual framework, the Shita Prasadi represents the ultimate destruction of the ego and the direct transfer of spiritual grace.
Because the food consumed by an enlightened being is considered purified, right? Imbued with their spiritual consciousness.
Right. By serving the sages so selflessly and consuming the remnants of their meals, the boy was essentially absorbing their spiritual frequency.
The texts say his sins were gradually absolved, his conscience was purified, and a profound, intense spark of devotion bhakti was awakened in his young heart.
And when the sages eventually left after the 4 months, they were so pleased with his service that they imparted highly confidential divine knowledge to him.
He was given the seed of ultimate truth.
Yes. So here he is, a young boy, completely inspired, wanting to dedicate his life to this spiritual path. But he's tethered.
His mother loves him deeply, and she is his only family. He feels completely bound by her affection and his duty to her. And then an unthinkable tragedy strikes.
One night, his mother goes out to milk the cow, and she is bitten by a poisonous snake and dies.
He's suddenly a completely orphaned child, utterly alone in the world. Now, most biographies would frame this as the darkest, most traumatic moment of the subject's life.
You definitely expect a chapter of immense grief.
But you're telling me his mother dying is framed in the text as a good thing.
It is framed by Narada himself as a blessing in disguise.
That is a very tough pill to swallow. A child losing their only parent is universally devastating.
From a purely worldly, emotional perspective, it is a devastating tragedy. There's no denying that. But the texts are forcing us to look at this from the perspective of a soul desperate for spiritual liberation.
So it's about what was holding him back.
Exactly. His mother, through no fault of her own, was the final physical and emotional tether keeping him tied to mundane earthly duties. Her affection was a beautiful but binding chain.
And her sudden passing severed that final rope. It freed him entirely to pursue the ultimate truth without any conflicting worldly obligations.
And he didn't waste a moment. He immediately headed north, walking through cities, villages, and fields until he reached a dense, uninhabited forest.
He's exhausted, he's hungry, he bathes in a pond, quenches his thirst, and sits under a peepal tree. He starts meditating on the lotus feet of God, exactly as the ascetics had taught him.
The texts describe him crying, tears filling his eyes, his body thrilling with emotion. And then the ultimate breakthrough happens.
Lord Vishnu actually manifests within his heart. He gets a direct divine vision, a darshan.
The supreme goal of his meditation is realized in an instant. And a darshan isn't just seeing a deity, it's the two-way energetic exchange, a profound communion.
But the texts say this vision lasts for a fleeting single moment, 1 second, and then Vishnu completely disappears.
The boy is overwhelmed with restlessness.
He tries desperately over and over again to regain the vision. He meditates harder, he concentrates, but nothing happens. The connection is just gone.
Finally, a celestial voice speaks from the sky and says, "Innocent child, in this lifetime you shall not see me again. In your next birth, you will be born as my divine messenger."
It is a moment of profound psychological tension. Wait, let me get this straight. He gives an orphaned kid a 1 second glimpse of ultimate joy, then completely ghosts him.
That's how it appears, yeah.
That doesn't sound like divine love. That sounds like emotional torture. Why would you give a grieving, isolated child the greatest experience in the universe and then snatch it away, telling him to try again next lifetime?
It sounds incredibly cruel if we view it through the lens of human psychology, where we assume that comfort, stability, and constant presence are the ultimate expressions of love.
Right, we equate love with sticking around.
Exactly. But the mechanics of bhakti operate on a completely different paradigm. Vishnu explicitly tells the boy why the vision was so brief. He says, "I revealed a glimpse of my form solely to awaken the yearning for me within your heart."
The yearning.
Yes, in the science of devotion, complacency is the ultimate enemy. If Vishnu had stayed, if the boy had a continuous comforting vision, he might have felt satisfied.
He might have thought, okay, I've achieved the goal, and his spiritual intensity would have plateaued.
Precisely. By giving him a taste of supreme bliss and then removing it, Vishnu ignited a fire of divine restlessness that would never, ever go out.
It is the psychology of the unmet desire.
The text explains that true devotion requires the gradual renunciation of all worldly desires, replacing them with a singular, overwhelming desire for the divine.
So that insatiable yearning, that desperate, unfulfilled craving is actually a far more powerful engine for spiritual evolution than comfortable presence.
It ensures that the boy's resolve will never falter, even at the time of cosmic dissolution.
It creates an infinite momentum. And it works, doesn't it? The young boy loses all his shyness. He's purged of desire, pride, and envy.
He spends the rest of that earthly life wandering joyously, chanting, just waiting for the right moment.
And when his time comes, he dies, and his soul merges with Lord Brahma during the period of cosmic dissolution. Which brings us to the next cosmic cycle.
When creation begins anew, Narada is finally reborn in his eternal, recognizable form.
He manifests directly from the mind of Lord Brahma, attaining the supreme status of a Brahmarshi and a Devarshi.
He's graduated, he possesses his Vina, his cosmic awareness, and his immortality.
So he has the eternal form, but a sage without a purpose is just a philosopher in a vacuum. How did he actually get his mandate to wander the universe? What does an eternal celestial sage actually do all day?
Well, he gets his defining role through a massive cosmic conflict. It's one of the most pivotal stories in the Puranas for understanding Narada's function, and it involves a figure named Daksha Prajapati.
Right. Daksha is central to understanding the architecture of the universe in these texts. Lord Brahma has tasked Daksha with the massive practical job of populating and expanding the newly created universe.
To accomplish this, Daksha creates 10,000 sons, known as the Haryashvas. The business plan is pretty straightforward.
These 10,000 young men are supposed to enter household life, procreate, build societies, and carry forward the cosmic lineage.
Daksha represents the ultimate administrator. He stands for order, societal structure, duty, and worldly continuity.
So he sends his 10,000 sons off to a holy place to perform austerities, to purify themselves and prepare for this massive responsibility of worldly expansion.
But Narada intercepts them.
He just shows up at their meditation spot.
Yeah,
And he completely sabotages Daksha's grand design.
he really does.
Narada approaches these 10,000 young men who are preparing to build the world, and he poses a profound, disruptive question. He says, why are you focusing all your energy on worldly expansion? The physical world is completely temporary. You are like children who know nothing. Before you create more life on this earth, Shouldn't you try to find the limits of the earth first?
He strikes at the very root of their assumption. He makes them reflect on the impermanence of the world, the inevitable mortality of the body, and the true aim of the soul.
He points out that worldly expansion, accumulating wealth, raising families, building empires, is ultimately a trap if it ignores the pursuit of spiritual liberation.
And his argument is so convincing, so logically airtight, that all 10,000 of Daksha's sons just look at each other and say, he is absolutely right.
They completely abandon their societal duties. They give up on the idea of household life and procreation, and they become renunciates.
They wander off in search of ultimate truth, never to return to their father. From a worldly, administrative perspective, this is a total catastrophe.
Daksha's entire lineage, his entire cosmic mandate, is wiped out in a single conversation. But Daksha is resilient. He creates another 5,000 sons, the Shabalashvas.
And Narada does it again.
He intercepts the next 5,000 sons, delivers the exact same philosophical argument, and they also abandon the world and become wandering monks.
And Akshay is beyond furious. He's consumed by absolute cosmic wrath. He feels Narada has deliberately destroyed his family, his sacred duty, and the very fabric of societal continuation.
This confrontation reveals the core philosophical tension of this entire biographical landscape. I mean, who's actually in the right here?
It's a tough call. If you're listening to this on your commute to work right now, dropping the kids off at school, paying a mortgage, participating in the economy, you're living Daksha's path.
You are maintaining the societal order. Daksha is just doing his job. The universe needs people in order to exist and function.
But Narada would look at your commute and say, you are wasting your time on a temporary illusion.
This is the eternal debate between two fundamental Vedic paths, isn't it?
It is. Daksha represents the Pravriti Marga, the path of worldly action, duty, family, and maintaining the social and cosmic order. Without the Pravriti Marga, society collapses. Creation itself halts.
And Narada represents the Nivriti Marga, the path of renunciation, detachment, and ultimate spiritual liberation.
Right. In the grand scheme of Hindu philosophy, neither path is strictly wrong. They're both necessary forces, but they are in fundamental, unavoidable tension with each other.
Daksha is furious because Narada prioritized individual spiritual liberation over cosmic societal duty. So Daksha, in his wrath, issues a devastating curse.
He curses Narada, saying, because you made my children roam about without a permanent abode, you will also suffer the exact same fate. You will never be able to stay in one place. You will roam the universe constantly, unable to stay anywhere for more than 2 gadi.
A gadi is a traditional unit of time, right? Roughly 24 minutes.
Exactly. So 2 gadi is less than an hour. Narada is doomed to eternal, ceaseless restlessness.
From a seeker's perspective, this sounds like a terrible punishment. Spiritual seekers value stability, an ashram, a quiet cave to meditate in. Daksha is condemning him to never ever find rest.
But the Zodiac source provides a fantastic analysis of this specific moment. It points out that this curse is the exact catalyst that unlocks Narada's cosmic utility.
It's like a boss firing an employee for ruining a massive project, but the way he fires him ends up completely backfiring.
Right. Daksha tried to punish Narada with instability, but he accidentally handed him a universal passport.
He fired the employee, and the employee used his newfound freedom to start a wildly successful, universe-spanning rival company.
If Narada had remained in one place, his profound wisdom would have been highly localized. He would have been the revered guru of just one ashram, or one specific region.
Only the privileged few who could afford to travel to him would get to hear his teachings.
But because of Daksha's curse, Narada's message could not be confined. He became equally available to the devas, the gods in the heavenly planets,
The asuras, the demons in the lower realms,
to human kings, commoners, and forest sages across all 3 worlds. The punishment of endless motion became the greatest opportunity for universal spiritual service.
he became the ultimate spiritual catalyst because he had to keep moving, spreading his disruption, his questions everywhere he went. The blessing of the curse. So what does an eternal cursed wanderer actually do with his infinite time? Because Narada doesn't just wander aimlessly, he meddles. He tests people, he constantly stirs the pot.
His interventions are legendary. He operates as the cosmic provocateur.
He is the direct catalyst for some of the most important events in Hindu literature. Let's examine his literary impact, because it is foundational. According to the texts, Narada is directly responsible for inspiring the creation of 2 of the most important epics in human history. First, the Ramayana.
The sage Valmiki was searching for a subject worthy of a great epic. He asks Narada, who travels everywhere and sees everything, who is the greatest man currently living? who possesses all virtues, immense strength, and perfect dharma.
And Narada replies without hesitation, Sri Rama, and gives Valmiki a brief, potent summary of Rama's life.
Which becomes the seed that germinates in Valmiki's mind, leading him to compose the entire epic Ramayana.
But he doesn't stop with Valmiki. He also confronts sage Vyasa. Now, Vyasa is the undisputed heavyweight champion of ancient literature.
He's just finished compiling the Vedas, the absolute foundational texts of the entire culture. He's categorized all known spiritual and material knowledge.
But Vyasa is sitting by the riverbank, feeling profoundly depressed, empty, and unfulfilled, and he cannot figure out why. Narada pops in and essentially tells him, "Your life's work is incomplete."
It takes immense audacity to tell sage Vyasa that his work is incomplete. But Narada, as detailed in the J.K. Yog text, pinpoints the exact source of Vyasa's depression.
What was it?
He tells Vyasa that while he has brilliantly detailed all the rules of society, dharma, complex rituals, and high philosophy, he has failed to purely sing the glorious divine acts of God, specifically Lord Krishna, with unalloyed love.
So Narada argues that any scripture, no matter how intellectually brilliant, that fails to ignite pure love for the divine is ultimately just trapping people in dry, mechanical rituals.
He says even the most eloquent speech is as impure as a crow-infested dumping ground if it fails to sing the Lord's praises.
It's a brutal critique, but it is precisely what Vyasa needed to hear. This confrontation pushes Vyasa to compose the Srimad Bhagavatam, which becomes the ultimate crowning text of the Bhakti tradition, focusing entirely on pure devotion.
So Narada operates as a muse, a devastating critic, and a catalyst for the highest wisdom.
But what makes these texts so fascinating is their willingness to show Narada's own flaws. The know-it-all sage gets taken down a peg on multiple occasions. The sources are full of stories where Narada gets profoundly humbled.
These stories serve a very specific theological purpose. They demonstrate that even the most exalted beings are susceptible to the ego.
There is a striking story about his artistic pride. Narada was incredibly proud of his musical abilities with his veena. He firmly believed he was the undisputed master of music in the entire universe.
Lord Vishnu decides this conceit needs to be checked. Vishnu takes Narada for a walk in a dense forest.
Suddenly, they hear this agonizing, haunting crying. They come across a group of beautiful women, but it is a horrific scene. Their limbs have been severed and they are writhing in terrible pain. Vishnu asks them, "Who are you and who did this to you?"
The women reply, "We are the Rajinis." The Rajinis are the presiding localized deities of the various musical tunes, or ragas. They are the physical embodiment of the music itself.
And the women tell Vishnu, "Our limbs were cut off and we were reduced to this mangled state because of the totally erroneous, careless, and arrogant singing of the sage Narada."
Narada has to stand there and listen to the embodiment of music, tell him that his arrogant playing is literally butchering them.
The source notes he hung his head in absolute shame, instantly cured of his conceit. It is a visceral, haunting metaphor for how arrogance in any art or discipline actually damages the essence of the art itself. When you play for ego, you mangle the music.
There's another story where his musical pride is challenged, this time by Hanuman, the monkey god known for his immense strength and absolute devotion.
Oh, this one is great. Hanuman sings a song of such pure, intense, unadulterated devotion that it literally alters the physical environment. It causes a solid rock to melt into liquid.
And Narada, who is listening, is so deeply moved that he places his veena down on the melted rock.
But when Hanuman finishes singing, the ambient devotion fades, and the rock cools and hardens back to its natural solid state.
And Narada's beloved veena is stuck halfway inside the solid rock.
Hanuman looks at Narada and essentially says, "No problem, you are the master of music. Just sing a song and melt the rock again to get your instrument back."
So Narada plays and sings with all his might, using every ounce of his technical skill, but nothing happens.
The rock stays solid. He has the technical brilliance, but he lacks the immense depth of pure devotion that Hanuman possesses. Hanuman has to sing again to melt the rock and bail Narada out.
He's humbled by art, he's humbled by devotion, but perhaps most profoundly, he is utterly humbled by Maya, the cosmic illusion.
So he's got the devotion, but he still has the pride. What about the illusion of the world itself? Does an immortal celestial sage still fall for the matrix of physical reality?
Oh, he falls for it harder than almost anyone. The texts recount a wildly vivid story detailing this. Narada asks Lord Krishna to explain exactly how Maya works.
And Krishna simply says, "I will show you later."
Sometime later, they're traveling together in a chariot across a scorching plain, and Narada gets incredibly thirsty. They spot a cool, clear stream in the distance.
Krishna tells Narada to go drink, but explicitly warns him, you must bathe in the water first before you drink it.
But Narada's physical thirst is overpowering. He disobeys Krishna's specific instruction, skips the purifying bath, and just scoops the water up to drink.
The moment the water touches his lips, he's instantly transformed into a beautiful young woman. He looks around, and Krishna and the chariot are completely gone.
The landscape has changed. He's just a woman, alone, wandering in the woods. Or rather, she is alone. The consciousness completely shifts.
She wanders until she finds an ashram inhabited by a sage. She asks to become his disciple. Over time, the sage falls in love with her, and they marry.
They live together for a very long time. She has 60 children with this sage. 60.
Think about the immense emotional investment, the physical toll, the deep attachments formed over raising 60 children. She is fully immersed in this identity as a mother and a devoted wife.
Then, a massive, catastrophic flood hits the region. The rushing waters sweep away all 60 of her children and her husband right before her eyes.
She is left alone on the muddy bank, a grief-stricken widow, starving, exhausted, and broken. The raw grief and the physical hunger of the human condition completely overwhelm her former celestial consciousness.
She sees a ripe mango hanging high on a tree, but it is too high to reach. In her absolute desperation and hunger, she drags the corpses of her dead husband and children, piles them up into a macabre mound, climbs on top of her dead family, and reaches for the mango.
Just as her hand grasps the fruit, a Brahmin appears out of nowhere and scolds her. How can you eat without bathing after a death in your family?
Ashamed, still holding the mango in one hand, she dives into the nearby stream to perform the ablutions. This is the moment the illusion breaks.
She dives in, and when she comes up out of the water, she is Narada again. He is a man. He has his memories back. Except for the one hand that he kept above the water holding the mango, that hand is still a woman's hand, wearing bangles.
The Brahmin reveals himself to be Lord Krishna. Krishna tells him to dip the other hand in the water, and it turns back to normal. The mango transforms back into his veena.
Krishna then reveals the terrifying, beautiful architecture of the illusion. He tells Narada, the sage you married was time, the Kala Purusha, and the 60 children you birthed and watched die were the 60 years, the specific named years in the Hindu calendar cycle, like Prabhava, Vibhava, and so on.
Let's unpack the metaphor here because it is astonishing. Why use a husband as time and children as years to demonstrate illusion?
Because that is precisely how Maya traps human consciousness. We marry time. We bind ourselves to the passage of time.
The 60 children represent the relentless cycle of years. Every time you celebrate a birthday, every time you mark an anniversary, you are interacting with those children.
You're measuring the decay of your physical form, forming deep attachments to temporary moments that will inevitably be swept away by the flood of cosmic dissolution.
The illusion is believing that these temporary years and the identities we build within them are our ultimate reality. Narada forgot his eternal nature the moment he gave in to a temporary physical desire thirst.
The text spends so much time embarrassing one of their greatest saints to reinforce a core tenet. The path of knowledge is never truly complete. No matter how high you rise, as long as you are interacting with the material world, you are subject to Maya.
Narada's willingness to be the subject of these humiliating lessons is part of his service. He experiences the pitfalls so that we can learn from them.
He doesn't just experience these things in a vacuum, he actively broadcasts them. He gathers facts, provokes powerful figures, and travels the three worlds carrying news and asking difficult questions.
Which is why modern academics have noticed a very specific pattern in this behavior. According to the IJFMR paper and the VSK source, Narada is not just a spiritual figure. He is the exact definition of a proto-journalist.
Applying a modern professional lens to a mythological figure reveals a surprising alignment. The academic paper argues that the essence of journalism, the gathering, verification, and dissemination of information to shape public discourse and hold power accountable, is exactly what Narada has been doing for millennia in these texts.
The VSK source points out that in ancient times, communication was highly localized. People exchanged news at regional fairs or pilgrimages. But Narada was the ultimate universe-spanning networker.
He was the only figure who had equal, unrestricted access to all three worlds. The devs, the humans, and the asuras. When he showed up in a king's court, people didn't expect a polite diplomatic courtesy visit. They expected hard news.
The IJFMR paper brings in modern communication theory, specifically applying Harold Lasswell's foundational 1948 model of communication to Narada.
Lasswell's model is famous, Who says what, in which channel, to whom, and with what effect. Let's actually map that out. Who is the communicator? Narada. But he is not just a passive broadcaster. What is he communicating?
He is delivering the news, divine instructions, but most importantly, he is delivering highly provocative moral questioning. He isn't just reading a bulletin. He is framing the narrative.
And his channel is fascinating. It is entirely oral and interpersonal. He isn't publishing scrolls. He is traveling instantly across realms, delivering the message face to face, which forces a reaction.
And who is he talking to? Everyone. He speaks to kings, sages, gods, demons, and common beings. He does not discriminate based on the audience's status or species.
Which leads to the effect. He shapes massive decisions. He inspires the writing of epic texts. He functions as a watchdog.
Just like modern investigative journalism, Narada frequently appeared in royal courts to hold rulers accountable.
He would ask probing, uncomfortable questions of kings like Yudhishthira, challenging them on their governance, their ethics, and their true responsibility to their citizens.
He forced transparency in places of immense power.
Woodward and Bernstein brought down a presidency through journalism, but they didn't intentionally start wars. Narada does.
The sources readily admit that he is constantly accused of sowing discord.
He deliberately tells the tyrant Kamsa that Lord Krishna is hiding in a specific village, which massively escalates Kamsa's paranoia and violence. Isn't he less of an impartial, objective reporter and more of a cosmic tabloid stirrer, someone who just loves drama?
The texts themselves acknowledge that he was frequently viewed by his contemporaries as a troublemaker, a strife maker.
But the expert rebuttal, detailed in the VSK text, focuses on the macro outcomes. While Narada frequently caused immediate chaotic discord, his actions invariably resulted in long-term public welfare.
By forcing hidden conflicts out into the open, by poking at the paranoia of tyrants, he catalyzed the destruction of evil or the restoration of Dharma.
The end justifies the means, from a cosmic perspective. His journalism always serves the ultimate social interest, even if it causes a temporary war.
The VSK text propounds that the ultimate religion of journalism is social interest. Narada's interventions were never for personal financial gain or petty revenge. They were calculated moves to correct the cosmic balance.
This archetype of the fearless communicator is so deeply respected in Indian culture that when India's first Hindi weekly newspaper, Udant Martan, was launched in Kolkata on May 30th, 1826, the editor made a very deliberate choice.
They launched the very first issue on Narada Jayanti, the birth anniversary of Narada. They literally invoked him as the patron saint and the ideal model of fearless communication.
Ultimately, the news Narada carried wasn't just political or social. It was, at its core, a manual for the soul. He wasn't just reporting on the world, he was trying to help people escape it.
We conclude his biography by looking at his masterwork. For all his wandering and meddling, Narada is fundamentally a teacher, and his teachings are codified in the Narada Bhakti Sutra.
These 84 aphorisms, or sutras, define the path of pure bhakti, or devotion. We are looking specifically at the profound commentary provided by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada on this text.
The very first thing that jumps out from this commentary is the strict definition of pure bhakti. I think many people assume devotion just means going to a temple, participating in rituals, or praying to God for favors, asking for a promotion, good health, or a successful harvest.
But Prabhupada's commentary makes a shocking claim. True devotion doesn't even begin until after you achieve self-realization.
It is a crucial paradigm-shifting distinction. The commentary categorizes spiritual seekers. It states that there are people addicted to the karma kanda section of the Vedas.
Karma kanda is transactional religion-doing rituals specifically for economic development, material results, or elevation to heavenly planets.
Then there are jnanis, the intellectual philosophers who seek self-realization and liberation from the material world through intense study and asceticism.
But bhakti, according to Narada, is a step entirely beyond both the transactional worshippers and the intellectual.
Bhakti begins at the Brahma Buddha stage. This is the stage where you have fully realized that you are not your physical body, you are an eternal spirit soul.
Pure devotion is not about asking God for things to satisfy your temporary physical body. It is the natural, healthy, active function of the liberated soul selflessly serving the supreme whole.
Because true devotion operates entirely on the level of the soul and not the body, it leads to some incredibly radical social ideas. Look at Sutra 72.
It explicitly states that in pure devotion, there are absolutely no distinctions based on caste, knowledge, physical appearance, wealth, or birth.
In a highly stratified, rules-based ancient society, that is a revolutionary, incredibly disruptive statement.
It echoes the VSK text's note that Narada's sutras deny the very factors that create societal division. If everyone is fundamentally a spirit soul, then all physical social hierarchies, who is rich, who is poor, who is a scholar, who is a servant, are ultimately meaningless in the eyes of devotion.
Narada takes it even further. He doesn't just say social rules are meaningless, he suggests actively renouncing them. The commentary on Sutra 8 is wild.
It says that to attain supreme love of God, one must actually give up all kinds of social customs, mundane religious rituals, and political obligations if they stand in the way of pure devotion.
He is advocating for a complete radical shift in priority. If a societal rule, a familial expectation, or a religious ritual distracts you from pure love of God, you are instructed to abandon it.
The gopis of Vrindavan are cited as the ultimate example in the texts. They abandoned all social conventions, their reputations, and their domestic ties purely out of an overwhelming, unalloyed love for Krishna.
So he's telling everyone to just quit their jobs, abandon their families, ignore all laws, and run into the forest to chant. That sounds like a recipe for absolute, unmitigated chaos.
And that is exactly the danger of misinterpreting a highly advanced spiritual text. The nuance here is absolutely vital.
Prabhupada's commentary makes it very clear that this ultimate renunciation is not an excuse for whimsical chaos, laziness, or indulging the senses under the guise of spiritual freedom.
While the ultimate goal transcends all rules, the practical process of getting there is highly regulated. You don't just jump to the end, you have to build the foundation.
The text outlines 64 regulative principles, known as Vaidhi Bhakti, that act as a strict discipline framework for the neophyte practitioner.
These are things like accepting a spiritual master, living near a sacred place, fasting on specific days, but it also explicitly focuses on avoiding impediments.
The very first impediment listed is achahara, which translates to overeating or accumulating more wealth than you actually need.
The rules also explicitly forbid associating with materialistic non-devotees, overstudying many books just to appear intellectually learned, and indulging in idle gossip.
You use the framework, the rules, to build the scaffolding. Once the building is complete, once you reach that spontaneous stage of love, you can remove the scaffolding.
But if you ignore the scaffolding at the very beginning and claim you are above the rules, the whole building just collapses into hypocrisy.
The rules are there to aggressively purify the material senses and the ego, so the soul can eventually experience that higher, unregulated state of spontaneous love that Narada embodies.
What an incredible, sprawling journey. We started this deep dive talking about a comfortable, linear map of a human life, and we ended up mapping the evolution of a cosmic consciousness.
The sheer scope of this biography is staggering.
We tracked a soul from being an arrogant celestial musician, Upa Barhana, completely blinded by privilege. We watched him live as a tiny worm, fiercely clinging to life under a chariot wheel, terrified of death.
We saw him reborn as a grieving orphan, the son of a maidservant, who received a one-second glimpse of God that ruined him for anything mundane.
We saw him cursed by Daksha to become an eternal wanderer and profoundly humbled by Hanuman and the terrifying illusions of Maya.
And through all of that immense friction, he became the universe's first investigative journalist, holding power accountable, and finally, the supreme teacher of devotion, authoring the Narada Bhakti Sutra.
The major takeaway here, especially for anyone listening who is navigating sudden, unwanted changes, is how Narada's life is a masterclass in reframing disruption, reframing the curses we experience in our own lives.
When Daksha cursed Narada to endless wandering, to never having a home or a moment of rest, it looked like a severe, vindictive punishment. But that very curse is what unlocked Narada's ultimate cosmic utility.
It forced him out of his localized comfort zone and turned him into a universal catalyst for change.
The disruptions in our own lives, the sudden job loss, the painful breakup, the forced relocation, they often feel like devastating curses in the moment.
But, like Narada, they might be the exact cosmic mechanisms, the necessary course corrections, carrying us to our true, wider purpose.
I want to leave you with one final, provocative idea to mull over on your own. It draws on a subtle detail we discussed earlier. Think back to Daksha's 10,000 sons, the Harashvas.
The young men tasked with building and expanding the material world.
Narada convinced them to abandon their worldly duties by telling them to go search for the limits of the earth.
He sent them on this massive, endless physical journey outward, and they never returned. Ask yourself this. In your own life, in your career trajectory, in your reading, in your endless scrolling online, are you acting like the Harashvas?
Are you endlessly wandering outward to find the edge of material success, wealth, or knowledge? Are you constantly consuming more and more information, looking for the limits of the world?
Because Narada sent them on that impossible physical journey to prove a very specific point.
The point was that the only truly infinite frontier, the only deep dive that actually has no bottom, isn't found out there in the world or in the endless accumulation of things.
It is found by turning inward. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking inward, and we will catch you next time.